So yesterday we were covering the history of Mexico, and we have actually discussed two of the most important civilizations there. We started with the Maya, then the Aztecs, and we have discussed the main features of the two civilizations. And I've asked you to add more for the features or to tell me about the rituals that were done by the priests in favor of God. What kind of rituals? Were they cruel? Were they normal? I want you to give me more information. Let's start by Hannah Esser.
So most of the rituals, or probably like all of them, were cruel. So uh, at first, like in addition to slicing out the hearts of its victims and spilling their blood on the temple altars. So like an altar, like they had a place for where they sacrificed their people in the temple. And it's believed that the Aztecs also practiced like a form of ritual of cannibalism. So the victims' bodies, after like being relieved of their heads, when after they cut their heads, they were mostly gifted to the noblemen, and the aristocrats or other distinguished community members to eat them, basically.
Yes, it was very cruel. Thank you, Hannah. So, Hannah, you have taken bonus plus one. It will be added to your quiz mark. Laura, you're
Okay.
next.
Yes, miss. 1 second.
Okay.
So, to persuade the gods to favor the request, a worshipper might make offerings of food or wine, and they would carry the ritual sacrifice of an animal before eating it for the god. Now, in the 14th to 16th centuries, and their tribute empire spread throughout Mesoamerica. And about the Maya, they lived in southern Mexico and northern Central America. And the Aztecs, they were referred to the people who lived in Tenochtitlan, and which is now the Mexico City. And the Maya people, they spread from southern Mexico to other cities. And 1 second. So the Maya, they were mainly settled on and around the Yucatan Peninsula in Central Africa, but the Aztec, they lived in the Valley of Mexico in the Central
All right. Laura, you finished? Okay. Thank you, Laura, for the valuable information. Also, you'll be
were
taken.
ruled by an emperor.
I guess you have a problem with your network.
Aztec, and
So, okay, Laura, you'll be taken also plus one for the research. Sama, go ahead.
Let's talk about the rituals or the Aztec or Maya civilization.
Whatever you have prepared, whether the civilizations or the rituals that were done by the
Yes.
priests. Can you hear me?
Okay, I will talk about the rituals.
Okay,
For
please.
yes, you can hear me.
Yes, very well.
It was called the Gori ritual,
Mhm.
and men, women, and children were sacrificed. The Aztec priests used blades or the edge of the knife to slice the chests of the victims, then offer their hearts to the god. And giving a heart to the god was considered honor. Then they threw the victims' bodies in the steps of Templo Mayor. Templo Mayor is a temple famous in Mexico.
Mhm.
Then there were two towers made entirely for human skulls.
Mhm.
The ritual killing of war captives in the war, they don't fight to kill, they fight only to capture them, and then they display their skulls, and their skulls were reminders of the strength of the empire. And they knew that these are the slaves of the war from DNA, or the soldiers of the war.
Mm.
They also sliced the hearts of the victims and spilled their blood. This was called the ritual cannibalism. That's it for the rituals part.
Thank you, Saba. Thank you very much. These are very valuable information. Also, you'll be taken +1. Hannah Hani, go ahead.
Yes, miss. Do I talk about the Maya rituals or the
Okay.
Aztec rituals or both?
Okay, go ahead. Tell me all the information that you've prepared.
Okay. First, we'll talk about the Aztec.
Mm-hmm.
One second. They for rituals they used both humans and animals. They sacrificed both to the god, depending on the god.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said that between 10,000 and 80,400 people were sacrificed over 4 days only.
Okay.
And this sacrifice had a religious role practice of the Aztecs. They believed to ensure the sun would rise again and crops would grow. And they also, for choosing the rituals or the sacrifice, they made something like a game. It is called the ball game. The game was played with a ball of solid rubber, and the player that loses who will be the sacrificer. This is for the Aztec.
All right, complete.
And the Maya believed that the soul is bound to the body of birth. Death or sickness is the only thing that part the soul from the body.
Mhm.
And they used many methods to choose the sacrificer. For example, they shooted the victims with arrows,
Okay.
and they also performed rituals in order to satisfy their gods and guarantee. They made ceremonies and festivals, marriage and baptism to sacrifice these things. That's it.
Thank you, Hannah, very much. Okay, let's move to Farah. Farah Mahlab, go ahead.
Yes, yes, Miss Siri. I collected some information about both the Mayan and the Aztec culture.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So first, the Mayan culture, they were very advanced and they started to farm and even do math. And they lived in, they had 60 cities that they lived in. They were inventors. They invented many things like their own calendars, farming methods, writing systems, or religion and sports. They only had one ruler per city, as they believed that their rulers were given the power by God, and they even believed that they could contact gods through the ruler. They were very great at the building. They built so many things such as palaces, pyramids, and temple observatories. They had many different god and goddesses. They had a unique writing system, and they had hieroglyphs, which are the signs that made up sounds and words. And that's it about the Mayan culture.
All right.
And then the Aztec culture, they were the first people. They discovered many things, and they were the first people to discover chocolate. And they believed that cocoa beans were a gift from the gods, and they hoped that drinking this chocolate would give them godlike wisdom.
Interesting.
And the Aztec believed in many gods. One of the most important was Tlaloc, the rain god. They keep the gods happy by making lots of sacrifices, including humans. Like the Egyptians, they built temples and pyramids for gods and king. They built huge cities and canals, but they never invented the wheels. And the Day of the Dead originated with the Aztecs. It's now a popular tradition in Mexico that celebrates the dead and reminds people that we shouldn't fear death. That's it.
Thank you, Farah, very much. Thank you. These are very interesting. Adham, go ahead.
The, I will talk about sacrifices that the Maya made.
All right.
The Maya, for ancient Maya beginnings and endings, there were occasions. The most sacred blood that they used for these sacrifices was from the ear and the tongue. When they pierced their ears, they believed that they were open to hear from the gods' revelations. And when they cut their tongue, it is said that they could speak what they had heard. Also, in their religion, they practiced human sacrifice. In some Maya rituals, people were killed by having their arms and legs tied while a priest cut the person's chest open and tore out their heart as an offering to the gods. This is shown on ancient objects such as the pictorial texts known as codices. They also performed these rituals to satisfy their gods and guarantee some such as marriage, divination, and baptism. These are rites related to the cycles of the year, cycles of time, and ceremonies of sacrifices for the gods. They also used various kinds of drugs and alcoholic drinks that were employed in these ceremonies. They used to think that drunkenness was related to the widespread practice of divination, which is a ritual act designed to follow an individual an individual can use so he can allow direct communication with the specific supernatural forms, such as seeing the future. Also, kings uh, would perform blood letting rites for every stage in life and in every important political or religious event, or even for significant calendar cycle endings. When Amaya state was drunk, it was supposed to give one the insight to interpret the reasons for illness, misfortune, and adverse weather, and more beliefs.
Thank you, Adham. Also taken +1. Let's move to Devolina. Go ahead.
The Mayas were polytheistic. They did not have any particular god, while the Aztec worshipped Huitzilopochtli as their main god. The Maya used two calendars, one which was based on the solar year, while the other was a kind of sacred almanac. Maya also used a three symbol numerical system that allowed them to record numbers into millions, while Aztec used a sacred calendar and a 365-day agriculture calendar. The Aztec writing system was based on glyphs, that are symbols that stand for sounds or words, while Maya created a writing system of hieroglyphics, which is characters that have meaning behind them. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Devolina. Also taken +1. Thank you guys for your efforts. I really appreciate them. But let me give one chance for people who has not prepared for the research to answer this question. So, what do you think? What did you learn from your friend's research about Maya and Aztec? Can you give me only one sentence about Maya or Aztec people, about the rituals, just something you've learned? Let me ask. Okay, where is Bomika? Bomika is not here. Bomika has left, so she's absent. Okay, Abdurrahman Khalid also not here. Okay, Zena al-Bughdadi. Zena al-Bughdadi. Okay. Hafela,
Yes, miss.
can you tell me just one sentence about what you've learned from this? About Maya,
Okay.
about Aztecs.
Um,
Hmm?
I learned about what kind of rituals were done by the priests to win the favor of their gods of the Aztec civilization, and
Yes.
also
Hmm.
the Aztec and Maya civilizations compare and contrast also what they say.
Thank you, Yusuf. Let me ask Krish.
Yes,
Can you tell me one thing about you've learned of the Aztec and the Maya civilization?
I learned about the agriculture and about their gods, about their festivals that they do.
Thank you very much. Okay, let us complete the lesson for today. Um, and I want to tell you that if anybody have left the session, it is considered absent. Let me complete. Yesterday, we were talking about the staples, the surpluses, and we've talking about the Maya and the Aztec civilization. Today, we're going to talk about the colonial time. And as you know, if any of the countries are rich, you'll find that colonialism is on the way. We'll start from the Spanish arrive. Okay, who's going to start reading? Hannah Hani, please read the Spanish arrive.
Okay, miss. The Spanish arrived. In the early 15s, a rival power appeared. Around 1520, Hernan Cortes led a small force of Spanish conquistadors, or conquerors, to Mexico. Within 2 years, these explorers and soldiers had defeated the Aztec and taken control of their empire. How could the Spanish conquer the Aztec with only a few hundred men? Spanish guns and armor were better weapons than Aztec spears. Another major factor was European diseases. The disease did not exist in the Americas until Europeans unknowingly brought them. Native Americans had no resistance to them, so the disease killed many thousands. Cortes also took advantage of the anger of other native people who resented Aztec rule. Several groups joined him as allies. Winning the Aztec Empire brought Spain riches in gold and silver mines. The conquest completely transformed life in Mexico. Roman Catholic priests converted native peoples to Catholicism. Conquistadors forced native people to work on farms or in mines. Spanish rule in Mexico was an example of colonialism.
Complete
Do
you
I
have
continue?
part, yes, then I will explain.
Okay. Under colonialism, one nation takes control of an area and dominates its government, economy, and society. The colonial power uses the colony's resources to make itself wealthier. In colonial Mexico, settlers from Spain had the most wealth.
Thank you, Hannah. Let me start by asking like 3 or 4 questions about this part. We said that we had the Maya, then the Aztecs. We said that we don't have a definite reason why did the Maya civilization collapsed. But then we said that the Aztec came and take control. The first question here, how did the Aztec civilization collapsed? How did the Aztec civilization collapse? Who can tell me? Okay, Adham, go ahead. Adham,
Okay. Um, 1 second.
how did the Aztec collapsed? Uta,
Yes, miss.
How did the Aztec civilization collapse?
From the European disease after it came and the Spanish came to control the region.
Mm-hmm. And
The Native American didn't have resistance for the European disease, so many died, and they took advantage and controlled the Aztec.
this is one reason, and the other one is Spanish were
Uh,
using.
gold, I don't know بصراحة.
You've already
Miss,
studied.
I know the
Okay,
second.
Adam, complete then.
They used advanced weapons.
Yes, thank you, Adham. We've studied this in Western Europe. Do you remember? The question was how could the Spanish people conquer the Aztec with only a few hundred men or with only 150 men? Do you remember this part? We said that we have two definite reasons. The first one, when the European, especially the Spanish came in order to colonize Mexico, which was very rich in gold, they were coming with their European diseases. And the Spanish, the Mexican didn't have the support immune system in order to get rid of these diseases. So most of them died out of these diseases. This is number one. And the living ones have considered that this is a curse from God because of the Spanish, and they should listen to them. That's why they have surrendered. They surrendered to the Spanish. Number two, we also said that Spanish people were coming with more advanced weapons, more advanced guns, armors, and better weapons than the Aztecs. That's why they could have easily take over the Aztec region. That's why the Aztecs have collapsed, and it was the Spanish time. When they came, and after you have won the Aztec region, Spain reaches in gold and silver mines because they were coming originally in order to take over the silver and the gold. But what were the procedures that were being taken by the Spanish people when they have invaded the region? They have made many procedures. Who can tell me what are they? What kind of procedures were done by Spanish people when they arrived to the area and controlled it? Huh? Abdullah Rashwan,
Yes, miss.
after the Spanish have won the Aztecs, there were several procedures done with the Spanish. What did they do?
The Roman Catholic priests converted
Yes.
native people to Catholicism.
Yes, this is number one. Roman Catholic priests converted native people to Catholicism. This is number one. Number two, can you tell me number two?
Conquistadors forced native people to work on farms and mines.
Thank you. And we said before that they have forced them to work in plantations or to grow cash crops, remember? So this is number two. And it was an example of colonialism. So these are the three procedures or the three results of the Spanish colonialism. Very important question. Could come in the exam. Sure, يعني be 100% that this question can come in the exam. Number one, the Aztec Empire brought Spain riches in gold and silver mines. Number two, Roman Catholic priests convert native people to Christianity, and it was called Catholicism. Number three, the conquistadors have forced native people to work on farms or on in mines. Remember, working in the plantations to grow cash crops and also to work in mines. So it was an example of colonialism. Colonialism means that one nation takes control over an area and dominates the government, economy, and the society. They have controlled the government because they were in rule after the Aztecs. They controlled the economy because they came riches in gold and silver, and they have controlled the plantations for growing the cash crops. And they have controlled the society when they forced people to work for them and when they forced people to change their main religions. Okay, guys? Is this part understood or do I have?
question.
Go ahead.
Who brought the gold and silver mines? The Spain?
Gold and silver mines were in Mexico. And when Spanish people came, they have take control over it. Because Spanish people came as colonists, okay? They came to Mexico in order to control Mexico and they take over gold and silver mines. So these are the three things the Spanish people did when they controlled Mexico. The session is about to end after 5 minutes. When the session ends, you log in again. So again, who can tell me what are the three procedures were done by the Spanish people when they controlled Mexico? Who can tell me what are the three things? Farah, go ahead.
Yes, they converted native people to Catholicism, and they forced native people also to work on farms and in mines. And the Spanish rule was an example of colonialism.
Okay, and they brought people riches in gold and silver. Thank you very much, guys. This is the most important question here. The second question of this part, how did the Aztec Empire collapse? How did the Aztec Empire collapse? Or how did Spain manage to control the Aztecs with only few hundred men? This is the second important question. Sama, go ahead.
Because the Spanish guns and army were better than the Aztecs, and also the European disease. Many Native Americans were killed, or
Yes.
like they died. So that's why they conquered Mexico easily.
Thank you very much, Yesama. These are the most two important questions at this part. Okay. Let's move to independence and conflict. Who can read independence and conflict? Let me choose someone. Okay. Abdurrahman Khalid. Abdurrahman Khalid.
Yes, miss.
Please read independence and conflict.
Okay. After almost 300 years of Spanish rule, a priest named Miguel Hidalgo led a rebellion in Mexico in 1810. The goal of the rebellion was to win independence from Spain. Some people hoped it would also create a more nearly equal society. The Spanish captured and executed Hidalgo. But by 1821, Mexico had gained its independence. Spanish rulers, though, were replaced by wealthy Mexican landowners. Native peoples remained poor. Through much of the 1800s, Mexico was troubled by a political conflict. Rival groups fought one another for power. Most of Mexico's people remained poor.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. So we said that, of course, any colonized country would ask for their independence. But after 300 years of Spanish rule, came a priest called Miguel Hidalgo, and he led a rebellion. So he led the rebellion in order to get rid of the Spanish people, was Hidalgo. Hidalgo had a goal for this rebellion, to win independence, and he also hoped that he would make an equal society. But actually, he was executed, and Mexico had gained the independence later on in 1821, and the Spanish rulers were replaced also by wealthy Mexican landowners, and native people remained poor as they are. So again, independence and conflict. Spanish rule continued for 300 years. Who wanted the independence was a priest named Miguel Hidalgo. What was the goal of its rebellion? He wanted independence and he wanted an equal society because native people were very poor, but the landowners were very rich. What happened to him? He was executed. Did the Mexican society won the independence? Yes, later on, but actually the native people stayed poor as they are. and the society stayed very poor, and only Mexican landowners were the wealthy and were in charge. Okay, let me stop this session. I give you 5 minutes break, then we'll continue logging in. Okay, log in after 5 minutes sharp. Okay, guys, bye.